Do you know who I am?
No, I don't. No. Oh.
GloRilla's drug arrest has long been known to the public, but her most recent court appearances might have made things worse. She reportedly showed up in court in a really relaxed manner. The situation is getting really ugly, and the judge is now upset. Could this little stunt land her in jail? Remain in place. We're breaking everything down. Abruptly, they hurried to replace Glo. On Saturday night, July 19, 2025, GloRilla was out in Indianapolis performing at the WNBA All-Star Game and spitting bars with Let Her Cook, Typa, and TGI during halftime. While the majority of people were either hanging out at the crib or posting up on the street, Shorty was living the good life and shining brightly on one of the biggest stages in women's athletics. But she had no idea that some folks back home in Georgia were going to completely upend her world. Now, look at it. Around 1:30 in the morning, as Glo was either enjoying her performance or possibly heading back to her hotel room, 3 masked suspects decided to rush up to her crib in the St. Marlow neighborhood of Forsyth County, Georgia. It wasn't just a bunch of jerks snatching up anything they could sell for $20. Not at all. This was some criminal behavior that was done on purpose. Additionally, according to her legal team, these shady mothers most likely knew she wasn't there. But this is where the story really heats up. Glo was not going it alone at that house. Her family members were stationed there, and they were terrified by these scumbags who broke into their personal space. What would it be like to feel safe and at ease in someone else's crib? Suddenly, you hear glass crashing and footsteps where none should be. These weren't your normal stick-up kids who wanted to grab a TV and head out during their amateur hours. The fact that the suspects purposefully targeted and grabbed pricey items before plunging shows that these clowns knew exactly what they were looking for and where to locate it. That level of intimate information made me wonder who was telling these areas about Glo's lifestyle, diamond collection, and most importantly, when she would be traveling. It gets really gangster at this point, and I mean that in the most sinister way possible. The intruders dispersed like roaches when the lights came on, and one of the strapped people inside the house got ready to fire at them to protect the area. Fortunately, nobody was hit. Not the people guarding the house, or even the crooks who should be caught. Ones that are hot. This specific detail is significant because it shows that the individual holding it down had no malicious intent. We're just trying to protect the family and the property as necessary. The family responded like any law-abiding individual would when a negative event occurred. They called for the blue-clad lads. There was some street violence directed against them. They defended themselves legally. They also desired the capture and incarceration of these criminals. After what transpired next, everything you thought you knew about how these police officers truly prioritize issues in America will be thrown into question. The deputies arrived to start looking into the crime when bullets were fired. That makes perfect sense. The projectiles were flown, crimes were perpetrated, and evidence needed to be obtained. The fact that the major crimes detectives and the crime scene team were involved showed that the police were taking this as the heinous crime that it was. But something odd happened that would turn this case upside down. During their investigation, these deputies noted that they detected a loud, potent stench that was consistent with illegal substances. Now wait, I'll paint a clear picture for you. These police officers showed up to investigate some really violent street crimes. Dangerous criminals were at large. There were gunshots, and property was stolen. And instead of focusing on the objective of capturing these armed criminals, they decided to shift their focus and focus on the scent of some marijuana.
They got a search warrant, and authorities discovered what they called a significant amount of marijuana in a bedroom closet.
They are currently reaching out to the Lerner Regional Drug Task Force to get search warrants for the property. Think about all the resources being wasted in this situation. A whole drug-related task force. Search warrant paperwork, more police, tea, and the realization that the real criminals who were threatening this family were getting farther away every second. They found an unidentified, scheduled, uncontrolled narcotic and what they characterized as a significant amount of marijuana in the master bedroom closet when they executed that search warrant. After a quick treasure hunt, they found about 2 pounds of loud and some THC wax, according to WSB-TV. You'll be ready to reverse the situation at this point. Thousands of people saw GloRilla perform at a nationally televised sporting event, hundreds of miles away, and cameras were filming her every move. Shorty's alibi was the most plausible one anyone could hope for. She was in danger of becoming the only one charged in this entire catastrophe, despite everything. The marijuana and other substances were reportedly in plain sight. This raises some really uncomfortable issues. If this stuff was indeed left out in the open like that, why didn't the house's residents, who were supposed to be worried for Glo's well-being and reputation, take care of things before calling the police? Even better, but why didn't they clean the house as soon as the burglars were gone and before the cops showed up? This brings us to some useful street knowledge that everyone ought to know. The people you trust have the power to hold you back or disappoint you. Sometimes you don't know which one it is until it's too late to do anything about it. Based on the materials they found during this burglary investigation, the authorities issued arrest warrants. At this point, the narrative gets considerably more twisted. The victim of a horrifying home invasion was not even in the same state when it happened. Yet she is currently facing serious criminal charges that may send her upstate for years. Let's look at the response from Glo's legal team. The public outcry that followed, and the disturbing pattern of how the system truly functions in regard to our people. But first, we need to understand exactly what happened to GloRilla when she found out that these guys were pursuing her and how her response stoked more discussion about celebrity justice in America. How they glowed dirty from these charges. Alright, so this is where the whole thing clearly shifts to the left. It's crucial to understand how ridiculous our judicial system can be when they decide to use one of our citizens as an example. So, I want you all to pay close attention to every detail. What came next is some real objectionable content. And the events that followed show how easily they may turn the story against you. GloRilla stayed at 100 and voluntarily turned herself in on Tuesday, July 22, 2025. At the Forsyth County Jail, when these officials got arrest warrants based on the drugs they found during the burglary investigation. Think about this maneuver for a moment. Shorty might have fought extradition, engaged in backroom politics, or hired some expensive attorneys to drag out the proceedings in an effort to make this whole thing go away. Instead, she did what most real people would do. She stood in front of it, her chest out. But the charges they were making against her were grave. Not at all. They charged her with 2 crimes under Georgia law. It is a criminal act to possess more than 1 ounce of marijuana, along with a Schedule I controlled narcotic. In Georgia, this isn't a slap on the wrist. If found guilty of the felony of marijuana possession, Shorty could have been sentenced to 1 to 10 years in jail. Let me break it down to make it more clear. While the filthy individuals who ran up in her place and scared her family were still free to wander the streets, GloRilla faced the possibility of spending up to 10 years in jail for some narcotics they found in her own crib while looking into the crimes against her. That's the only instance of reverse reasoning I've ever heard of. She bonded out the same day for $22,260. But the damage to her reputation and the weight of handling these grave accusations were already starting to weigh heavily. Imagine yourself in her position. After a fantastic performance at a major sporting event, you're feeling fantastic. But upon returning home, you find that you have an arrest warrant out for you and could face jail time. The legal situation makes this much more complicated. With the exception of a few limited medical uses for low THC oil, Marijuana is still illegal in Georgia, despite the fact that it has been decriminalized in other states. The severity of these laws is demonstrated by the fact that possessing more than an ounce is considered a criminal act. Asterisk drug laws are still in effect in Forsyth County. This has nothing to do with California or Colorado. Georgia still has drug prohibitions that date back to the 1980s, but this was not something Glo was going to take lightly. On July 24, 2025, she took on this problem head-on on social media, and her response was nothing short of explosive. She posted about X in a really candid manner. Crazy. My house was broken into on Saturday when I was performing at the WNBA All-Star game in Indianapolis. And instead of identifying the suspects, they focus on some cannabis. So, no, neither was I caught. My residence was broken into. 3. I wasn't home. In conclusion, once my house was broken into, I was the only one arrested. But notice how thoughtfully she crafted her assertion. She was careful to point out that she was at a well-known nationally broadcast event in order to give an indisputable alibi, in addition to emphasizing how utterly absurd the scenario was. She probably did as her legal team had instructed, and used the word cannabis instead of weed or loud to appear more professional. The lone individual taken into custody was the victim of a violent offense, and Glo didn't end there. Shorty showed that she knew the game by selling $40 to transform this unfavorable situation into a good one. Item featuring a photo of her mug. Travis Scott's post-legal conduct was compared to this one. Furthermore, according to TMZ, her mugshot looked amazing. Let's discuss turning lemons into lemonade. In reality, she was making money off of something designed to destroy her career. Meanwhile, her legal team wasn't playing around either. GloRilla's attorneys, Marissa Goldberg and Drew Finling of the Finling Law Firm, effectively declared war on the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office in a statement they issued. They saw the arrest as a concerning illustration of the change in law enforcement priorities. Listen to one legal expert's assessment of the situation.
Well, if you don't have anything to hide, you don't hide anything. So my view was she shouldn't have had the weed in her house, and obviously there had to be enough where the smell was overwhelming, and law enforcement, on a call to protect her, found, oops, we got to do it.
But at this point, her defense team's arguments become very heated and should raise concerns about police abuse across the United States. To begin with, GloRilla was the victim of a horrific home invasion and not a suspect. This may seem like common logic, yet it seems that these badges need explanation. Second, even though her family members who saw the break-in called the police, as they should have, the officers' focus was drawn to what they described as a very small amount of marijuana, which was completely at odds with the sheriff's claim that a large amount had been found. The third and most damaging claim is that GloRilla hadn't been at the scene, and police went to considerable measures to secure arrest and search warrants for him, her crib for some time, and no arrest warrants were issued for the violent intruders. Her attorneys characterized the whole matter as completely ludicrous and a dreadful waste of public funds. Their actions went beyond only keeping their clients safe. They were attacking a whole system that seemed more concerned with attracting media attention by catching a celebrity than with dealing with violent crimes on the streets. The legal team raised awareness of the suffering that GloRilla's family went through during this home invasion and condemned the lack of progress in catching the true suspects. Think about this real discussion. They were afraid in their own neighborhood, and guns were pointed at innocent individuals. Afraid for their safety, and the guilty motherfuckers remained at large while the victim was being prosecuted. But the sheriff's office refused to make any concessions. Sheriff Ron Freeman responded to the event by saying, "The homeowner is a victim of a serious crime, and we are committed to bringing the suspects to justice. we must continue to enforce and uphold the law in all aspects of this case. This sentence effectively illustrates the problem. Despite acknowledging that she was a victim, they treat her like a criminal. The legal expert explained why they believed this to be the case.
Substantial evidence. If I went to bed last night, there was no snow on the ground. I woke up this morning, there was snow, hardly likely in Atlanta today, and we know it snowed somehow. They smell marijuana, and as a result of that, they executed the search warrant, and what did they find? Well over an ounce, which is a felony.
According to the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, detectives said that they had recovered physical and forensic evidence from the suspects, but the burglary investigation was still ongoing. However, no one had been taken into custody for the actual burglary as of July 27, 2025. Let me tell you all about this. Days after the crime, 3 thieves left physical evidence, but they failed to capture them despite having a county sheriff's office, a regional narcotics task force, and major crimes detectives on hand. But a few days after the crime was committed, they managed to capture the victim. The streets responded, as you might expect. There was a lot of conversation on Twitter about the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. By writing, GloRilla claimed that no arrests for suspects were made after her home was broken into. But she was the one arrested for marijuana possession there. Users are deflecting attention away from the burglary and toward GloRilla's drug charges. The Forsyth police certainly did glow filthily, no question about that. Among the media outlets that covered this subject were The Guardian, CNN, WSB-TV, People, Fox 5, Atlanta, TMZ, and The Washington Post. They all underlined how regressive it was that GloRilla was both the victim and the one being arrested. When there are so many well-known news organizations, they are all covering the same story from the same point of view. That should help you understand the gravity of the problem. Let's adopt a more comprehensive perspective and ask some difficult questions about the peoples encircling her that night, wondering if this was all a case of bad luck or if there was a bigger plot. The real tea plus a few difficult loyalty-related issues. It's time to examine the more complicated and divisive topics that have the entire community talking, but that no one in the mainstream media wants to directly touch now that the essential facts of this entire catastrophe have been made public. Even though everyone was preoccupied with whether these police officers went too far and clearly did something wrong, there is another side to this tale that shows some unpleasant realities about the streets, loyalty, and the people you decide to keep in your inner circle after you get to the top. No one wants to have a direct conversation about the elephant in the room, but everyone is dancing around it. I'll keep things easy for everyone. In particular, how did GloRilla end up being the only one charged, even though she wasn't in the same state? The answer to this question reveals disturbing possibilities that should worry anyone who has ever trusted someone with their freedom, their reputation, or their lives. This incident sparked conversations about systemic issues, such as the disproportionate targeting of Black Americans for marijuana-related offenses. Even though this is a significant problem and a component of a larger pattern of injustice in our system, I want to focus on something that I think is much more important for our people to understand. The people you trust have the power to either harm you or defend you. Furthermore, the differences between the two are not often apparent until it is too late. Let's take a logical look at what happened that night. GloRilla's location was approached by 3 armed intruders. Family members who were residing there were frightened by these hostile strangers. Shots were fired to defend the premises. The criminals backed off. The family reported the incident to the police. Then, this is a crucial point. A long period of time elapsed between the police being called and actually showing up to start their investigation. At that moment, everyone in that house knew about the upcoming law. They knew there would be a lot of searching, questioning, and spying. They knew that GloRilla, the famous person and owner, would be the target of the most exposure and danger. I would like to ask you all a question. If someone was providing you with a place to stay, supporting you, and whose success was probably aiding you in many ways, wouldn't your first instinct be to make sure there wasn't anything in that house that could harm them? If you truly cared about protecting someone, that is, victim blaming is unrelated to this. It is clear that GloRilla has experienced some violent street occurrences in addition to police overreach. It does, however, raise some significant questions about her inner group and whether or not they truly helped her throughout her difficult period. Think about it this way. The cannabis was found in the master bedroom closet, which was clearly GloRilla's private space. The people in her circle would have known this. They would have known that anything found in her bedroom would result in her being pinned. They would have recognized that she was most vulnerable. But that evidence magically remained where the law would seek it and where it would most seriously damage her life and career. GloRilla had already run into police in Georgia. In April 2024, she was arrested for DUI in Gwinnett County after making an illegal U-turn at a red light and smelling of marijuana and alcohol, according to the police. This earlier incident gives some background for the 2025 arrest and illustrates a pattern of legal problems in the same state.
Do you know who I am? No, I don't. No, ma'am. Oh.
This is where a darker trend in the entertainment industry is connected to the plot. This case served as a reminder to those close to him amid his legal troubles of what had occurred to Juice WRLD. The basic question remains the same, despite the fact that the circumstances were different. Do people who surround someone who becomes a star and a cash cow truly care about them? Or are they just there to benefit from their success? A flawless breakdown was given by one analyst. Why didn't they get that garbage out of the home and bury it glowing? Since many people are unfamiliar with the concept of snitching, snitching is not talking to the police when seated. The fact is that in many celebrity circles, there is an unspoken understanding that the success of the star benefits everyone in their near vicinity. However, when legal concerns come up, it's all for the person. Those who lived in luxury in GloRilla's home and profited from her success, even though they were nice. They couldn't bring themselves to protect her for 5 minutes from a predicament that would have forced her to move upstate for 10 years and terminated her career. But let's also discuss the law enforcement aspect of this matter, since their acts were equally wrong, albeit in a different way. Many people saw GloRilla's drug-related pursuit while the burglars were still at large as just another example of racial racism and policing. This isn't speculation. This is a proven pattern that has been studied in detail. As a young, successful black woman in the South, you already have a target on your back. When you add in celebrity status, wealth, and influence, you become an even more attractive target for law enforcement agencies looking to make headlines and show that they are tough on crime, even if that means ignoring real, violent offenders in order to prosecute someone for possessing a plant. The legal expert emphasized the broader implications.
Absolutely. If someone who is charged with a crime volunteers, gives him, or in this case herself, up, the prosecutors, the DA's office, and the DA's office in Versailles is very good. They will likely reduce this, depending on the amount, could easily be reduced to a misdemeanor. But again, it depends on the amount and how it was packaged.
Despite all of this legal drama, GloRilla proceeded to further her career by playing at the WNBA All-Star Game just hours after the break. She was scheduled to perform with Rob 49 and Mooney Long at her inaugural yearly Glow Bash in Memphis. On July 25, 2025, her ability to carry out her professional duties in spite of this legal nightmare is a testament to her exceptional tenacity and professionalism. Her status as one of the hip-hop industry's rising stars was solidified by hits like Ya Glow and TGIF, co-signs with industry titans like Rihanna, and even visits to the White House in March 2024. Glorious. Her debut album came out in 2024. This was no minor celebrity dealing with legal troubles. This marked a notable increase in renowned hip-hop artist who was honored by the biggest names in the business and welcomed to the White House. The potential consequences she might face were dire. If convicted of the felony marijuana possession, charged GloRilla may face a sentence of 1 to 10 years in a Georgia prison. A lengthy jail sentence may also be part of the punishment for the Schedule I controlled substance charge, depending on what it was and how much of it was involved. Think about what this means. Due to narcotics found in her body, a woman who had devoted her life to avoiding the streets, who had built a successful career using her abilities and tenacity, and who was supporting her family and creating opportunities. For others, was in danger of losing everything in her own crib after being the victim of a vicious crime. According to the latest reports, GloRilla's team and supporters continue to criticize the suspects for not being jailed as the sheriff's office continues to search for forensic evidence in the burglary probe. Weeks later, dangerous thugs who terrorized innocent people are still at large, and their victim is still facing felony charges. This case is a prime example of all the problems with our justice system's priorities. It shows how protecting innocent people and catching serious criminals can be subordinated to making sensational arrests that get media attention and raise a law enforcement profile. Information, it also illustrates how, on occasion, the most significant moments in the lives of superstars can be marred by disappointment from their closest friends and relatives. By reacting to this situation, by creating merchandise from her mugshot, speaking out in public, and hiring renowned legal counsel, GloRilla has shown that she is aware of the game and knows how to defend herself. But she shouldn't have gotten involved in this conflict in the first place. As the streets watch, this case will be remembered as a warning of how easily the system can work against you and how important it is to surround yourself with people who can actually support you when things become tough. Like this video, click on the card that appears on your screen to see additional information.